Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil and TireRack.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, Brian Robinson.
Hello, welcome. This is podcast number 287. No John Davis today, so my apologies in advance for that. But appreciate you hanging in there, and hopefully we'll make it worth your time.
What are you going to call him, JD?
JD, yes.
Well, that's how we refer to him around the office.
That is correct.
JD.
JD, Lord of MotorWeek. As you heard the excellent voice of Greg Carlos there, he's joining us today along with Jessica Ray and Alexander Kellum.
Or Alex.
All right, or Alex. All right.
Keep going back and forth now.
I'm sorry.
I just thought maybe that was a mistake. I thought I should go Alexander.
Doesn't matter to me.
Okay, all right.
I just pointed it out to be obnoxious.
Well, all right. Since you're there and being obnoxious,
Yeah.
why don't you jump right in and tell us about the recent Detroit Auto Show back once again?
Yeah. So I got to attend it this year. My first time in Detroit, which was pretty cool. But
what did you think of the lovely city of Detroit?
Well, there was a giant rubber ducky this year, so that was great.
I heard and saw nothing but tweets about that duck.
Yeah. There was that, and there was like a guy in a dinosaur costume walking around. That was pretty cool. And the president was there.
And like a car. There was like 4 wheels set up with nothing around it.
Yeah, I saw that too.
And the president officially announced the pandemic was over. So that
Right, yeah.
that was
Everything's
the
back
biggest
to normal,
news from
folks.
Detroit. Yeah.
That's the big top story. Yeah, no. So obviously anecdotal on my part, but from everything I've heard, much smaller show this year. And it shows, pun intended, I guess. Not nearly as much stuff. But there was some neat stuff that we're going to talk about today. So starting off the day and with this podcast with Jeep at a couple things. First was the... Thank you. 2023 Grand Cherokee 4xe 30th Anniversary Edition. 30 anniversary of Grand Cherokee, obviously not of 4xe. So, of course, it's using the 4xe system, 375 horses, 470 pound-feet of torque. It's basically that, but with some special trimmings, blacked out like cladding or 20-inch wheels, badging, etc. Modified front fascia, but again, Grand Cherokee 4xe. It's loaded up with all the good stuff in there. The package cost is $4,700 on top of the Grand Cherokee 4xe. Orders are going to open up later this year, or maybe they have by the time this podcast comes out, and they'll arrive early 2023. But again, it's pretty much standard fare. It's a Grand Cherokee 4xe.
Package.
Yeah,
I guess
Moving
full
on.
badges.
sort of going along the
Can
same.
you go back to it again? I'm sorry. You said it was how much? 4,500?
The package is going to cost $4,700.
4,700. And
Yeah.
specifically, what am I getting for 4,700?
So you're getting some black badges.
Okay.
You are getting 20-inch black wheels.
All right.
A special or a modified front fascia, I should say.
Okay.
Getting those sweet blue tow hooks in the front, of course. On the interior, it's going to be loaded up. You get the black Capri leather. You're getting the 9-speaker Alpine audio. But a lot of that stuff you can get on the 4xe.
I was gonna say it's pretty standard on the 4xe because there's a lot of options.
Yeah,
on the
they're
4xe.
already pretty much loaded up. So,
Yeah.
I might be missing a few things, but those are the big highlights of it. Yeah. So
It's a collectible, Greg.
it is.
Oh, well, once again, I'll say
It's a
it.
cheap thing you probably don't understand.
And I do not understand. I do not understand the Jeep thing.
Well, the next one offers a little bit more, especially by way of Jeep. It is the 2023 Wrangler Willys 4xe. So again, still the 4xe system, but this one packs some pretty neat stuff. Heavy-duty Dana 44 axles, mud terrain tires wrapped around 17-inch wheels. With the factory lift, you get 10.1 inches of ground clearance. You also get 30 of water fording, which is really cool. Standard LED head and fog lights, rock rails. Of course, special decals. I mean, where would you be without that? With the 4xe blue surrounding them, really cool. This is going to start at basically $54,000, and then you get the
Entry
$1,500
level.
destination. Yeah, well, yeah.
4-door Wrangler only, or 2-door as well?
I believe so.
Four-door
Yeah,
is only
it's the
available
4xe.
with the 4xe.
Ah,
They don't
that is
have
correct.
Too.
That is correct.
They crawled that one out on stage. Looks pretty sick, but yeah. So
A lot of people are opting for the Willys just because it's cheaper than a Rubicon.
It is
you
neat.
still get a lot of
When I heard the
cool
Willys-
off-roading stuff.
when I heard the Willys name, I was hoping it'd be closer to that concept we had in the 41 or the 43. Be neat.
Yeah.
Probably can't sell that, but hey, whatever.
Did they say Willys? I just want to, because I want to get over this debate
Oh.
because it's constant. Whenever we say it, it's wrong. It's Willys.
Willis.
Yeah.
Willys.
How
Some people
did
said
Jeep say it
Willys.
at the event? I just want to be clear.
I thought
for
they just said
everybody.
Willys.
Right.
Like every person I've talked to has said Willys.
Right, and then the argument is that it's Willis.
Right.
It's.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out which.
I
is
feel
which, 'cause
I
I've
feel like I
always
would have
said
remembered if they
Willys.
said Willis because I would have been like, what?
But I feel like it's so subtle. You could say it either way. You know what I mean?
Depends where you're from.
Yeah.
Maybe.
How you feeling that day.
Maybe.
And there's only a very certain amount of the population that will get offended if you say it.
But they're
against-
the loudest.
Hey, it's the
portion of
internet. It's the internet, man.
No, there's a Willys Jeep show and where I live every year, and maybe I should stop in there and ask them what's going on. Mm-hmm. I'll do that.
Yeah, report back on that.
All right, I will do that. I'll look out for it. Moving on, Alexander. What else?
Yes, yeah. So the rest of the Stellantis booth was kind of like, it's just stuff we've seen, basically. They did have the Chrysler 300C.
The
which
breaking news
neat.
was there that they still make the 300.
Right, that was the surprise.
Yeah.
Well, this is the send-off model, so
It'll
that
be
that,
much
that won't
longer.
be and it's going out with a bang. It's got the 6.4 liter V8 in it, which is pretty gnarly. But
What an odd car.
yeah,
That thing
it's-
was so popular though when that first came
remember
out.
Oh,
that.
yeah. No, I know.
That was
Yeah,
such
but
a
you still see a
huge-
lot of them.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
and it's a fantastic car, really, when it came out.
well, this is the last chance to get one.
All right, maybe I'll
Powerful
do that.
one,
Yeah.
too.
They had the Dodge Hornet on display, which again we've already talked about that ad nauseum, so don't really need to worry about that. But it was cool to see in person, and they had the Daytona SRT concept, which again we've talked about, but it was gnarly. So I'll give it that.
Gnarly. All right.
Yeah, that's kind of like my buzzword now. So love it or hate it. I hate it. Can't stop myself though. Yeah, moving on to Chevy though, they had one vehicle under the curtain, and that was the Tahoe RST Performance Edition. You're gonna pick up on a trend that these are things that we've seen before, but just slightly different. So it's got the 6.2 liter V8 in it with 433 horsepower and 467 pound-feet of torque. If you know your Tahoes, that is 13 more horsepower and 7 pound-feet of torque more than the current RST with the 6.2. A lot of the, I guess, special accoutrements are going to come by way of suspension. So it takes a lot from the pursuit-rated police Tahoe. So like chassis tuning, retuned dampers, police spec springs, etc. Of course, you get the black SRT badge. I mean, or RST badge rather. That's a lot of acronyms, man.
Black wheels too.
Yes,
on.
and you get the
Black
red,
interior.
and you get black interior. You get the red Brembos, so you know it means business. This package is going to cost about just rounding down slightly $8,500, and that's going to go on top of, to my understanding, the 2023 Tahoe RST with the 6.2 four-wheel drive is starting at around $70,000. So
Yikes.
you're looking at about $80K. Yeah, basically add destination in there. Yeah.
That's that's what it takes these days. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But did Chevy also had something else there, right?
Well, they had the, next to all that, they had all their electrification goodies. They had the Equinox, or Equinox EV,
EV.
yes, Blazer EV, and the Silverado EV all on display. So yeah, those were pretty neat to see in person. I didn't, everybody was kind of crowding around them and everything, but
It's the future
pretty
of the
cool.
brand.
Yeah.
It is, but it is still the future. They make it sound like they've been
Yes.
selling these things for years, but yeah, it is still the future.
We're
not-
still many
we're not quite-
a month
yeah,
away
we're not
from
quite there
even
yet.
seeing any one of these
Yeah.
on the road specifically.
Yeah, I mean, outside of that, a lot of the other things we saw there were just like concept vehicle. Like Lincoln had a couple concepts out, Lexus had a concept out. The only other reveal was after the show. It's the one I'm foaming at the mouth
I know.
for.
I can't believe
Yeah.
you saved it to the
I'm
end.
I
saving
thought
the
we were
best.
about to move on without even talking about it. I'm like, did I miss this in the last
I'm saying it's the
podcast?
best for last, and as much I could do a whole symposium on it, but I'll keep it as brief as possible. The 2024 Ford Mustang. So I got to see it before the show, the Ford Archives, but then they did the big reveal in Hart Plaza, the whole live stream, and I'm sure most people saw it. 7th gen model. A lot of people were asking me even before, and of course can't talk about it. Now we can. Was electrification going to be part of the deal? It is not. I'm sure a lot of people are happy about that. The 5.0-liter Coyote V8 is returning for its 4th iteration, and the 2.3-liter turbo inline 4 is as well. Exact horsepower figures were not given for either, at least in my press materials. They say it's going to be pushing 500 horsepower. I'd believe that. The V8 had some pretty cool changes to it. I believe it's a new oil pan, new cover, and most importantly, 2 separate air intakes with 80mm throttle bodies, I believe. So that was pretty cool to see. They had it up on a stand for us. Got to kind of look at that. Pretty cool. I don't know what changes were made to the EcoBoost, but they're saying it's going to be more powerful as well. So you got that. 6-speed manual is going to be standard. They didn't say exactly which one. If I had to guess, it's still going to be the MT82, which I know some of the Mustang people out there may be a little about. The Tremec, which probably won't be the... It'll probably be a slightly different one from what you can get in the 350 and the Mach 1, but that's going to be for the Dark Horse Mustang, which is not the performance package. That's a separate thing, but this is more of a performance-geared one that will be pushing 500 horses, if not at 500 horsepower. And it gets a couple other accoutrements. Everyone listening has probably already seen it, but in case you haven't, yeah, the new model. It's not a total, like, complete overhaul. Like, if you look at 2014 to 2015, going from the S197 to S550, like that was a whole change. This is going like from S550 to what I believe they're still calling the S650, and it's not like the name kind of gives it away. It's not a complete change. You look at it from the front, it's very different, more kind of like squared off grille. EcoBoost and GT will get kind of separate fascias. GT gets like a heat extractor like slotted on the hood. Going to the side profile, to me, they look almost identical. Like I took a picture of the EcoBoost from the side, and I'm like, wow, but it kind of looks like mine. And then the rear has like a body matched deck lid panel. The tri-bar taillights are still there, but they're now concave, kind of like the 67, 68 fastback look. Yeah, I mean, the exterior doesn't see too many changes. It's really the interior where you get the most goodies. Gone is the double hump dash, which I kind of miss, as well as the flight switches, which is a gimmick, but I play with them all the time in my car. So hey, whatever.
I always hated that you couldn't go both ways with the flight switches.
Yeah.
Like you can only go up with them, right? Which doesn't seem intuitive at all.
Yeah, it's a little because if you want to go through your modes, you have to. It's like, oh, I missed it. I got to keep going. You know,
I can't do it at all. So
right, I know.
That's fine with me. Honestly.
Yeah, well, there's still some buttons there for you. But yeah, so now like standard are 2 very large screens. I think it's a 12 point something or other for the gauges, and then 13 inches for the infotainment.
That's going to be standard on all of them.
So all of them are going to get the 2 screens, but in the higher trims, it's kind of like put together into one monolithic unit. But I think they're 2 separate displays.
Okay, yeah.
They're heavily
doesn't look nearly as good in the base level where you get the 2
where it's
screens.
the 2,
where
no.
they're separated.
They are super customizable. They showed us for your gauge cluster, you can actually make it look like the old Fox body gauges, and at night they glow green.
Why don't we do this more?
Agreed.
I should be able to download my gauges, right?
We're getting to that
Digital
point.
gauge cluster.
Yeah, we're getting to
It'll
that point
happen.
for sure.
People asked like, "Hey, are you going to do other model years?" And they were like, "Well, we don't want to say anything, but we
yes.
always can." So it's like, it's like, all right, they're going to add more. They said some of them were more into like the track ones were inspired by the Ford GT and stuff. So it was cool to see all that kind of stuff. New plastics, new leathers, seat belts can match, and the only other 2 features I can think of off the top of my head, drift brake, which is standard on performance package, available in other models. It looks and acts like a drift brake would, I guess. Co-designed with Von Gittin Jr., so big name in the drifting scene. I'll be honest, opening up a can of worms here. We already have a lot of memes out there about Mustangs sliding into unfortunate situations, so maybe this is not the best idea, but it also looks really cool. Dual caliber setup in the rear looks gnarly. So
sometimes not the best ideas are actually the greatest ideas.
Right, exactly. So they say
on the internet soon.
They say it's a competition-ready system. How true that is, I'm not sure, but I'm excited to see it in action. Last thing is remote rev, because we can't be obnoxious enough with the cars. You can now use your key fob to rev it. So
Really?
Just asking for jokes at this point, right?
I mean, look, it's a gimmick, but hey.
Yeah, look, man, Dodge has been doing the gimmicks for a while now.
Yeah, and there's people
Ford gets in on it.
that love to geek out with that stuff, showing off their neighbors and stuff.
If I had it, I would use it.
Yeah.
I'll say it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. It's a funny feature to me. I will joke about it, but if I had it, I would certainly use it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, thank you for that very comprehensive look at the Detroit Auto Show.
It was something, yeah.
Can't wait to drive that Mustang.
Oh, I can't either.
And now we will turn to some more closer to our driving future, Mercedes-Benz EQS SUV, which Jessica Ray has recently driven.
I have, yeah. And, there are two EQS models now. We need to be clear with this. There is an EQS sedan and there's an EQS SUV, and that is how they're being denoted. Now, badging-wise on the car, they both just say EQS.
Right.
So, we'll try to make it as least confusing
It's
as
just
possible.
so
It makes sense. Mercedes EQ is the brand,
Right.
much like Mercedes AMG
Sure.
is a brand, and the S is for their full-size vehicles, whether it's a sedan or an SUV.
True.
So it's not that difficult.
Yeah. Well, I don't give people the benefit of the doubt. But okay. Anyway, so as you can imagine, it is similar in many ways to the EQS sedan. Styling wise, it has that same like front. Sort of very smooth look, because Mercedes is pretty much only focused on like maximizing the efficiency of this car. So even though it might not be the most attractive vehicle, electric vehicle out there, it is very like wind resistant.
Which is the most attractive electric vehicle out there? Sidebar?
That's a good question.
Oh, I thought you had it.
No,
All right.
that's a hard one.
Okay, then move on.
I don't know. Maybe
think about it as you
I'll think about
answer it at the end of the podcast.
But anyway, so it is very aerodynamic, and I say that because when I was driving it, I tried to compare it as much as I could to like the driving experience of a GLS, because ideally this is kind of where they would want their buyers to go, like
Sure.
go from a GLS to an EQS, and it's very different. It drives much more like the EQS sedan. I found that it doesn't feel quite as long, and later I learned that it is actually like 10 inches shorter than the EQS sedan. So when you're driving it, it sits very low, and so you don't feel the damping of the suspension quite as much as you would in something that was much taller, a much taller SUV, which the GLS is a very large, boxy SUV. And so the driving experience of the EQS was really wonderful. And I drove it on a lot of like tight roads. Where was I? In Colorado. So yeah, in Colorado, a lot of like mountain-ish roads. And it was really enjoyable, incredibly smooth. There is 10 degrees of rear axle steering, and that comes standard on all of them. And that is incredibly helpful because you definitely don't feel like you're piloting something that is quite as long as it is. And I mean, I will say it really impressed me. What I did find kind of interesting, though, is that there's like an economical version of the EQS SUV compared to the sedan. And so like, it starts a little bit lower. This starts at around $105,000, which I think that the EQS sedan starts somewhere around 110. But the hyper screen is optional. It only comes standard on the highest trim, the 580, which is the dual motor high output one. So like the standard EQS SUV gets the same like screen setup that we see in the S Class, that like larger, just the larger infotainment in the console, and then the digital dash cluster. I mean, it's still very nice, but that was kind of an interesting thing.
What kind of range are we talking about?
So the 450 Plus, which is a rear drive model, that can get you about 300. They're saying 305 miles of range. It's not EPA rated yet, but this is what Mercedes is saying. And then the 450 and the 580, which are dual motor, they can get 285 miles. So a little less than what you can get in the sedan.
Right. But a lot more weight. So.
But a lot more weight. It's bigger. I will say, I mean, I haven't been in the third row because this is a 3-row SUV. And so this is probably the only, other than the R1S, I think this is the only all-electric 3-row SUV on the market. Oh, I should not say that. A Tesla Teslas are technically model, I don't know which one.
X.
Has the third row. But so this is kind of in a class of its own. You can fit back there. I can fit back there. I don't think Greg would want to fit back there, but I don't know. I haven't been in a GLS to compare. But like proportions wise, it seemed very roomy inside. I mean, it had everything you kind of expect in a Mercedes. So, I mean, I was really impressed with it. And I really liked it because I really like the sedan. So I think they translated it really, really well in their SUV, which, I mean, is unsurprising. So.
Yeah, I mean, it looks fantastic. I'm sure it does drive great. Hopefully they'll have some more entry-level EVs coming here soon.
They are
do you have any
coming.
news? I mean, they've been in Europe for a while now.
I saw something that I'm not allowed to talk about.
Okay.
But there are more models coming. I also drove the EQE sedan.
Okay.
So ideally, there's going to be an eventual EQE SUV.
Right.
And then they have this weird thing where they have the EQB,
Right.
which is built not on this EQ platform. It's built on the GLB's platform.
Right.
So it drives completely differently, looks completely different. And then, I don't know if you remember, we were supposed to originally get the EQC,
Right.
which is also built on the GLC's platform. It's very, very similar to the whole EQB situation, but Europe is only getting that. We're
Right.
not getting that. So I don't know how they're going to do like a flip, because ideally you're just going to want to change the EQC and the EQB eventually to this new all-electric platform that they're using, because, you know, the ICE platforms that they have are just not optimized for it. So they will come. The entry level will come. It's just a matter of when. But I mean, they're launching. This should be in dealers by this fall. So I imagine within the next 2 years, we're going to see a lot more of these EQ models kind of hitting the dealers. So yeah,
We shall see. Anybody? Questions or comments?
I'm confused. There's just it's nothing we can fix here. There's just so many
see,
letters
this is
being
my
thrown at
problem
me.
with the EQ, right? It's just.
I hate that it's called the EQS SUV. I think that's terrible. And then that's
So
where
what do
I'll
you
end
think
it.
about the GMC Hummer EV pickup
I
and the
hate
GMC Hummer EV SUV? You feel the same way about that?
I don't like it personally.
No,
But I think
don't
it's 'cause I
feel
have
the
to
same.
ride it
But
all the time.
I'm going at this as like specifically EQS SUV having two S's next. This is like a right.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking at it as like someone as an editor.
Okay.
You know? And I won't comment any further
like,
because
if
we
it
could have a
was-
whole
I was
separate
gonna say-
podcast about things like this. that
He won't
bug
have
me.
an issue with the EQE SUV.
Here's the thing. I love the Hummer pickup truck so much that I can't hate anything about it. So we can get into that in another podcast.
All right. Well, since we're talking to you already, Greg, how about you fill us in on another EV and that you've driven recently? Hopefully you are on board with the naming situation.
Yeah, well, you know,
this one's a little
like
better.
Lucid. So like you think of like the Lucid Air. So it's the Air is the model, Lucid is the brand, and then there's this was an owner's car. We didn't get this from Lucid like we traditionally get press cars. But this one was the Dream, and it was
Dream
the
Edition.
Dream
It was the
Edition,
Dream
yeah.
Edition. Yeah, it's Lucid
Dream.
Air Dream
Edition. No, just
Edition.
Dream
It wasn't
Edition.
performance.
Dream
It's Dream
Edition
Edition.
Performance.
Dream
and
Edition
there's Dream
Performance.
Edition Range,
Yeah.
which is a different model.
Anyway, that I just drive the car.
Yeah.
Honestly, people like show up at the track and drive the car. Okay, so this one that all adds up to 1,111 horsepower.
Nice.
And I'll say that one more time: 1,111 horsepower, coming from an all-electric vehicle. Range is 471 miles. If you go for not the performance version,
But
but
the
you go for the
range.
range version, this is yet another version, you get over 500 miles.
It's insane.
That's the big deal. Like when that news broke, I mean, that was, and we'd been talking about it on podcasts, like what's the next benchmark, 500 miles? Well, that's been broken. The downside of that is it's by Lucid, and it's not like a major manufacturer. We're not going to see a lot of these things on the road. I've never even seen one until we had this one in. And looking at it, I kind of compare it to the EQS sedan.
Nice.
It's like not like, to me, like classically good looking. They went like futuristic. It's very aerodynamic. I think the spectacular part is once you get inside and you have that Tesla Model X type windshield where it basically goes from the windshield, from the cowl all the way up over your head into like basically a sunroof. And like I got in this thing and like it took me a minute to kind of catch my bearings of like, wow, this is crazy. I looked up and like I half expected Tom Cruise to be flipping me the bird. That's a Top Gun reference. If anybody's unsure, go and watch Top Gun if you haven't. And even if you have, go watch Top Gun. So yeah, really cool inside. Go ahead.
If you look up, it's so strange to see how the sun visors are mounted.
Yeah,
like just to the glass.
And you have to
It's
have them,
so
but it's
odd.
like if you could do without sun visors, it'd be great because the sun visors also take away from like the aesthetic of
Yeah.
it. But we need sun visors.
Anyway.
All kinds of cool technology inside. You have that lower screen where you control basically everything: climate control, radio, mirrors, steering wheel, which that annoys me having to go through. But again, this is one of those journalist complaints. If you have this car, you're going to have your own profile and knows who you are. Everything's set up perfectly. The gauge screen, maybe somebody else can confirm, is that taken out of a Taycan? Because that is like literally the same exact curved gauge, hoodless gauge screen.
Did not know that.
It looks very similar. If it's not taken from the Taycan, it's very similar looking.
Inspired,
But
maybe.
it's a good, and I don't knock it. I'm just saying that's where I've seen it before. But on the road, it's just like. Me and Dave Scrivener were talking about it, and we both use the word pleasant. It's a very pleasant car to drive, and you have various drive modes, and they do make a big difference going between like the high sports setting to just like comfort mode. I mean, there's a big difference in the way the throttle reacts to inputs. But keeping it in normal mode, I mean, it's just a very luxurious experience. Minus, in this specific owner's car, there were some kind of squeaks and rattles. Hard to say. I don't know how long the guys owned it. Maybe it was an isolated issue. There were definitely, excuse me, squeaks and rattles, especially from the steering wheel. But the reason I bring that up is because we've seen issues with Tesla and other independent automakers. They have issues with this. Seen it with Fisker. There are just things that we take for granted in major or like highly manufactured vehicles. High volume is what I'm looking for.
Hey, good word.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you can put up with some of that stuff, like I said, a very, very nice drive experience. But we took it to Mason-Dixon to get the performance numbers. The owner was really excited about that. I personally did them. And 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds.
Beautiful.
Which is very fast, very, very fast. And it is to me, was more visceral than other EVs. I don't know what it was. Like, clearly that's fast. But it was just something about how it was delivered that was very exhilarating to do that over and over again. And it was super consistent. I mean, probably like 10 times in a row, 2.6, 2.6, 2.6. And then the quarter mile was the same thing, 10.5. And this is like really the special part. It was at 133 miles per hour, which EVs are generally quick, but not necessarily fast. A trap speed at 133 in an EV is fast. Yeah. That's an accomplishment.
I mean, I think a lot of manufacturers limit
Right.
the top speed. I think for Mercedes, I think their EQS models can only... Well, the SUV can only go 130, and I think at most, maybe like the AMG EQS can go like 155.
Yeah, and a lot of them don't like to deliver you that full power for the full quarter mile. They start reeling in power once you get rolling.
I will say at 100 miles per hour, there was a noticeable drop off in torque, but I mean, it still pulled all the way down the track. So that was exciting. Took it through the cones, not too hard because I didn't want to chew up the guy's tires. I think they're Pirellis. Either way, shockingly, no pun intended. I don't like puns.
That's fine.
Alex.
Keep that in mind for more quick spins.
So yeah, anyway, it was surprisingly quick. The steering, like basically every other luxury car we drive now, is like so numb, it shocks you when you turn in, and like it's so quick. Really not much body roll. Like for like a 5,200 pound car, it didn't roll nearly as much as you'd expect it to. But that's kind of where we are. People are so good at developing chassis, suspensions. So yeah, I won't get too much into that because I quite honestly didn't push it as hard as I normally would other cars.
And what's the price tag?
So that Dream Edition goes for 170.
170, yeah.
But that's not the starting.
They do have lower models. Yeah.
So, and I don't think they've even started building them yet.
Yeah, that one's going to be the entry level, and that's going to be like 80. Yeah,
and
85.
I think if you think about like specs wise, that'll have like an 82 kilowatt hour battery compared to this, which is I believe is a 110 kilowatt hour battery or close to that. Maybe 108, somewhere around
Some
there.
up there, yeah.
But yeah, so a significantly smaller battery.
Obviously, the Tesla Model S is its main competitor. I mean, I guess you could throw the Mercedes in there, but really it's more about these American-built ones. Which one would you buy, Greg?
Recency bias, I'd go Lucid just because it really was on the street just a very nice car to drive. And I haven't driven a Model S in a while. But I think Model S's are becoming so they're everywhere. You never see Lucid. So exclusivity, I think you're getting that for $170,000 here.
Like an older platform, the Model S platform is.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the interior definitely goes to Lucid.
Oh,
I mean, that's hands down. It goes to Lucid. Yeah, so that.
All right.
There's my answer.
Yeah. Any other Lucid comments before we move on to our lightning round?
No, I just think it's a beautiful car.
Did you really?
I do. I don't know. I look at the EQS compared to the Lucid.
I mean, I'm not saying it's horrible, but I wouldn't say beautiful. Yeah. I agree. I mean, I thought the front was its least attractive angle. The profile was good. I'm not sure about the trunk. It's got like a clamshell, weird bustle back trunk.
I was just kind of happy that we didn't have like a bland one. Like the Dream Edition comes in kind of like this beigey.
Was that not
color.
Beige? What did we have?
No,
I don't know.
What I'm saying. No, I'm saying a bland color like white or like black. It looks. I don't think the Lucid looks good in black. I've seen one in black, but at least we had one with a little bit of dimension. Like, Anyway.
All right. Well, let's move on to this trending automotive topic.
Yeah.
Organizers have confirmed that the Detroit Auto Show will return once again in September 2023, with this year's show being a bit lackluster in reveals. Hey, these are not my words, folks. I'm just reading the paper. How important do you think the North American International Auto Show is in comparison to other auto shows? Well, you have 30 seconds. We'll start with you, Alex, since you're the only one that's
went there.
Been there
That's
recently.
true.
So go.
Wow. Okay. I think on a national scale, I think it'll still have some importance, especially for the more localized like automakers there. But I mean, clearly evident by this year's show, basically no international presence or very little and all that. So I think the bigger shows like New York and LA and stuff will still obviously draw them in. Detroit maybe will just be on a national scale important for these kind of reveals, but not, nothing crazy.
I mean, it's an important location specifically because so many American brands are headquartered there. But yeah, I think it was just a bit disappointing, I think, overall. I mean, I think everyone was a bit disappointed. They were just expecting a little bit more, and we didn't get much. And then also some people, they were revealing stuff before they even got to the show.
Yeah.
Like, I hate when they do that, kind of just like, why?
That's been the trend for a while, just so they get all the publicity while they can. Greg?
Yeah, I mean, we've been transitioning to this whole like lackluster show thing for a while, but it's still good for the consumer. So I think it holds value there, especially when you go to Detroit. I mean, the amount of American vehicles there is just astounding compared to where I've experienced in the rest of the country, where there's a lot more diversity in the cars. The proof's in the pudding. I mean, like the North American International Auto Show came back after COVID and like it was lackluster because everybody's focused on, like you said, Jess, New York, and I think LA is the premier
Yeah, I
show
think
now.
LA too.
And it's a good show for obvious reasons out there in LA. They get all kinds of star power around their cars. It's a nice location. But to me, I think, that LA has pretty much taken over as the premier show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a trend pre-COVID for a few years, like we were talking about, less and less actual reveals happening there, more of it happening off-site places, and then COVID happened, which, kind of was the final blow. So I'm not sure.
I was going to say, we talked about it a little bit, I think, on some of our podcasts, like what's going to happen now to auto shows,
right.
Went very early on.
Yeah, but as Greg has wisely mentioned, although we don't get a whole lot of news out of them, they are huge for consumers to go there. We take for granted that we get to see and get in all these cars. Most people don't, but here's a great opportunity where you can.
And they're
get
just
to
there, sitting there for people to get in and experience.
Steel gear shift knobs.
Yeah, if you're not in the media, you should definitely check them out.
So, yeah, I think it will always have a place, whether they'll be the place for us to get big news. I'm not sure that time is probably past. And time to move on to our viewer question from Russ. Very good one, I might add. Russ asks, why do EV charging stations never have canopies? Safety? It seems like a pain in bad weather.
I mean, he's right. It is kind of annoying when it's raining outside. The answer is that I think they just don't. They just decided not to build these little individual stations with a canopy above them. And then now I think we've seen a lot of charging stations fleshed out. And there are some out west that are huge, that are like, 20 plus chargers. And they have like a larger gas station like canopy to them. But Russ is kind of right. I would much rather have a canopy.
Yeah, it depends where you are. We're definitely in that transition phase, and I think most of the EV stations in our area, they're not even really stations. They're just chargers put up in a parking lot somewhere, wherever it was convenient or whether they had space. They're not really building structures for them, but I think it's certainly coming in the future. Anybody else?
We were talking off air about your idea. I want to hear it, unless you don't want to give it out to people.
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't necessarily my idea, but I'm just saying it would be nice. We think of rest areas and to have like a multi-level thing where the first floor, would have multiple charging stations, and then the second floor would be like some shops or some restaurants, some places you could hang out for an hour while your vehicle's charging. Have those along rest areas, much like we have on the interstates now, I think would be awesome. I think we'll get to something like that. The time, I'm sure we'll bring the time down, but it's still going to require vehicles to sit still for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to be as quick as filling up a gas station.
Correct. So, the more we can give people to do during that time. I know I've traveled some with EVs and charged on the road. And, if there's something you can do while you're waiting, that's awesome. If you got to sit there and play on your phone for 45 minutes, that's not as awesome.
True.
Back to the question, it's does anybody else feel weird plugging in when it's raining?
A little bit, yeah.
Like you're at a DC fast charging station and there's water dripping down. You're about to charge your electric vehicle into a major charging station. And nothing has ever happened. I'm not saying it does or it's an issue, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't have that thought in the back of my head.
Yeah,
So
I've heard other
maybe
people
putting a little canopy over top would make some people, more hesitant people, feel better about these things.
Yeah, but it's clear that when you plug them in, especially the high-speed ones, there's not current going through it. You have to wait, then you turn the pump, they talk to each other, the vehicle, and then it begins sending current through.
Hey,
so
I hear you, man.
It just goes against. I think it just goes against everything we've ever learned about electricity.
But when people say things like that, I was like, you remember you're driving around in a vehicle with 15 gallons of gas in it that you manually put in there once a week, which is the equivalent to like 15 sticks of dynamite.
True.
So it's like you've become very comfortable with that. So it's just a matter of getting comfortable with it.
Great. Now I'll have that thought.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
It's like you get on the highway and it's like a truck carrying all the like trees, all the timber, and you're like, final destination. Great.
Oh, I
And you
think
just-
about that all the time. Like if you're behind somebody that like, I don't know, if something snapped, it would just
Yeah, you're just
fall
like
right
yep.
into you while you're both driving like 70 miles an hour on 695. Yeah, I think about that sometimes.
It's a dangerous place out there,
It is.
folks. Buckle up.
I'm scared.
Anyone have a rant or a rave?
That's a good question.
Jess has been really ranting.
I know, right?
I feel like she's got something. She's always got something.
No, I
in the
was
hopper.
trying to find a rave, like
Oh,
a really
very
good rave. Oh, this is kind of
Hummer
a rave.
EV, right?
Breaking news.
This is kind of a rave, but it's also a PSA maybe at the same
Oh,
time.
very good.
Because in Maryland, we just a new law went into effect, an expanded law for our move over law. But here, I got a little bit more to this.
Better
Okay.
speak, Robinson.
Okay, so because before it was like you have to move over if there's emergency
No,
vehicles.
yeah, you're talking about moving from the right lane to the left lane
Or vice
when
versa.
when there's a disabled vehicle or police car on the right. You're not talking about like in traffic you have to move.
No.
Right, we're talking about a road hazard on the shoulder, moving over
Yes.
and slowing down. Yes.
Previously in
Continue.
Maryland,
Yeah.
it only was with emergency vehicles or like official
Right.
whatever. Now it's expanded to anybody who is off on the side of the road who is in like a emergency situation, so like a car that has its hazards on, right? And I'm raving about this because I'm excited for people to really start doing this more for everyone, because I always thought it should be done for everyone. I've always slowed down or moved over on a lane if I saw somebody like actively on the shoulder, like in distress, because that's just the safest option. And also keep in mind, it's move over or slow down.
Right.
You don't have to. You should be doing both, but if you can't move over, you must slow down.
Right.
Anyway, as a person who was, my Jeep was on the side of the Beltway like 2 weeks ago.
Is that a Jeep thing? I wouldn't
It
understand.
was
Oh
a
my
Jeep thing. You really wouldn't.
Of course, it was
understand.
on the side of the road.
It
but-
was on the side of the Beltway, and and this is before the expanded law was passed. So technically, none of what these people
So
were
people
doing was
just drove
illegal.
by at speed, laughing at you. I don't have to
Basically.
move over.
But yeah, and like the amount of like dangerous maneuvers people were making, like right near my vehicle that was off, and I was pulled off pretty well on the side, and I was also out of the car because it was so hot I couldn't sit in the car. So it was like me, the vehicle, and then the rest of the giant highway. So like I felt like I was in the safest position using the vehicle to block me. But anyway, so my rave is that law. Like I think it's such an important thing, and I think so many more people need to be cognizant of it, because there are a lot of deaths that way, whether it's from emergency responders or just people on the side of the road like who can't move.
Absolutely. There's been a couple of deaths just here in our area on very similar situations, people associated with our station. And it is an incredibly dangerous situation, but I'm somewhat skeptical in that no one really, well, I shouldn't say no one, very few people followed the law that we did have, having seen that happen multiple times. But first responders and police officers will tell you that's one of the most dangerous situations they ever find themselves in, is pulling people over in the middle of the night and, on a long side of a highway, or stopping for someone who's in distress and alongside, and then, being confronted with that. Yeah. Cars constantly buzzing right by you at 70 miles an hour. And we've all seen the videos of all what can go wrong. So by all means, please move over and slow down. Think about the people alongside of the road.
Yeah, so that's my rave. I don't know if anybody has a rant, but
People telling me what to do. This used to be a free country, as I remember. I'm totally
Greg,
kidding.
give a rant. Come on.
No, I'm
I think we're good for this week. We'll save Greg's rant for next time. I'd like to thank our audio engineer, Jillian Cookman, podcast producer, Jessica Ray, podcast creator, Bob Mixter. Be sure to follow us and like us in all the usual places. And appreciate you watching and tuning in to MotorWeek.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Lucas Oil and TireRack.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.